Good evening. My name is Renee Battle Brooks, and I'm the director of the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights. I'm so sorry, my brain just did something. We are the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. Our office investigates complaints of civil rights discrimination. We combat human trafficking. We ensure equal and equitable language access to county government services. And we build programming to educate on civil rights, on social justice, and to build community across the diverseness that is our county. With me tonight as co-host is Kyla Hannington. She is our Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Office of Human Rights. And we are so excited to bring you an amazing story. How did a woman from Plymouth, Massachusetts, end up driving 3 days to give a violin that is more than 100 years old, that belonged to her father, to a police officer in Prince George's County? Tonight, in partnership with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, we welcome Officer Alexander Strachan of the Prince George's County Park Police, and we welcome Denise David-Fitzgerald of Plymouth, Massachusetts. They're going to share their unique story, and we're going to celebrate the life-changing and the life-giving connections made through music. So we are so excited to have you both here with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe to start off, Miss Denise, why don't you just tell us how you heard about Officer Strachan?
Well, it was about, I think, 2.5 years ago. I was watching the morning CBS News, and there was a segment on with one of the CBS reporters from, national network, profiling Alexander and his work. And I've had a little bit of a challenge over the years trying to decide what to do with a family heirloom, which was my dad's violin. And the minute I saw the story, I just said, this is perfect. I have to find this guy, and I hope to he can do something good with this violin, because the story that I was told from my dad was when he came to the United States from Albania in 1920, that a neighbor taught him to play the violin and gave him the one that I had in my possession for, 50 years, more than 50 years. And I was just thrilled. And I don't actually recall how I ended up contacting Alexander. I think I may have called Walter Reed Hospital, and I think they gave me contact information to reach him.
Fascinating. What in particular resonated with you when you heard the story on CBS?
Well, just the good work that he's doing with his music, and so many people struggling through hard times, and giving them some solace and comfort during difficult times in their life. But also, it sounds like from what I've learned since then, that he does some nice community programs that are uplifting and fun. So
Yeah,
I just love it.
excellent. So yeah, go ahead, Kyla.
I'm just going to ask a clarifying question, because I actually have seen the video, and for those watching at home, I did put the CBS story that Denise saw. I put a YouTube link in your chats where you're watching for you to check out later. But for those people who haven't seen it yet, one of the things we don't know is what we know that what you've said is, Officer Strachan is playing his violin, and actually either one of you can answer this. In what context? Like, where were you playing Officer Strachan that the news did a story about?
So the CBS News interview, I played in the Bowie Senior Activity Center, and it was really cool because like the news crew, they came and I gave a concert. They put a GoPro like on the scroll violin. It was hard to play with. But that's what we did. I was like, look, let me give a concert in the community for Prince George's County. And I did it in uniform. And it was really neat because in addition to giving the concert right outside, we did an outdoor interview right by the butterfly garden. So it's just a lot of pretty scenery. And then they came to my violin teacher's house, and it was like, well, this is new. And it was so cool because I've never seen just like the light was so big. Like it was like a giant sunflower. I'm like, oh my God, it just lit up the entire room. And it was just such a neat experience because in addition to being able to play, I was able to talk about some of the work that I've done for a couple of years in uniform. But also most importantly, got to tell my grandmother's story and how music has had such an impact to her late stages of Alzheimer's disease and breast cancer, and end of life.
Yeah, I think we very often discount the importance and the value that music brings, right? We've talked here a little bit about, well, the program that brings us all together is that connection that it made, but you've talked about the healing aspects, the soothing aspects. And I think, Officer Strachan, for you as a policeman, how that works in the community, that connection. So maybe talk a little bit more about that, especially given sort of, I think we acknowledge we're living in some turbulent times.
Absolutely. So oftentimes, let's say if I have my violin while I'm on duty, and especially since Black History Month, I'm performing a couple of events. People don't. So my violin case, it's red. So it's red. I got the Batman, and I mean, it looks cool. So I'll carry it on my back, and people think, "What are you carrying?" Some people guess a skateboard. I've never seen anybody carry a skateboard in a case before, so that one's new. But oftentimes people aren't sure what's going on because when you have a police officer arrive on a scene, you have this perception, this notion of that there's trouble, that something's going on, something's abnormal. But when I come violin, people think, well, this is interesting. This is unique. Why? It's such a unique, I guess it's a unique blend that people don't anticipate. So when it comes to police work, yes, it throws people off guard, but it puts officers in a different light instead of from a place of fear or being on guard or that someone's in trouble, but something's amiss. It's just using the violin to do away with that fear or notions and to really come together as a community.
Yeah, I think that is so important. I'm sorry, it's very noisy. It's usually not. So it's only because we're doing this. Yeah.
But
Of course. I'm surprised my son hasn't started just crying yet.
Well, we do hope for an appearance.
What
Yeah, we would love that.
Yeah.
So
That makes three of us.
Yeah.
right, there we go. I wonder if maybe you would play for us a little bit from the instrument, and then we will talk
Sure.
with Miss Denise about this instrument. And
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll play Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Perfect. Thank you. I wish we had better audio on this platform, but thank you. Thank you. So,
Beautiful.
Alex, let's look at it from your perspective.
Sure.
So, what's going through your mind when you receive the call?
First, that was spam. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, because I mean, it happens. It's during COVID, but then it came through. Denise's email came through. She reached out through the contact form via my website, which I've gotten spam. Like, hey, do you want a cleaning company for your business? I'm like, no, but I'll take one for the house. Sure, that'll be great. And so when I looked at the message, I'm like, all right, let me look into this. So we kept in contact. I reached out and we just kept in contact. And it was hilarious because, I mean, years had passed, the COVID years. I mean, years. We were just keeping each other updated about our lives. I'm like, oh, my wife's pregnant. Okay, the baby's due. All right, he's here. It's just, wow. So, I mean, it's just the fact that we were able to continue to stay in touch and actually come together and make this all happen was really cool.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize about violins is typically the older they are, the sweeter they become.
Yes.
So maybe talk a little bit about this gift of more than 100 years old and kind of, from not a technician standpoint, but yeah, talk a little bit about the violin and your impressions. Yeah.
Right. And I know as a violinist, which I'm sure, I don't know if people know that you play the violin, but surprise. So the general notion is that the older the violin, the better, the more valuable it is. The thing that's special about this fiddle is that it's rare to have a violin 100 years old and to be well maintained. So oftentimes when you come into contact with violin that's at this age, it will have insects in it, there's mold, the strings are completely far gone, there's cracks. I didn't want it to do any work when I took it to the shop. I got new strings, and I put a different chin rest on, but aside from that, I didn't have to do much in terms of repairs.
Yeah,
so it was good to go. And so when Denise and I met up, I'm like, all right, I knew the strings were going to be in need of replacement, but I could still play on it. So to be able to play off the bat, with minimal tuning and just right out the case, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And for those who aren't string players or violinists, we change our strings every year, if not more. But
it's more depending on how often you play, the type of strings, and also depends on your living conditions. So if you live in a very dry environment, then you have to take a specific kind of care of your instrument, because wood, if it's too dry, it's susceptible to crack, and you can end up with a hefty repair bill. Or if it's too humid, then the wood can warp. So I don't remember, Denise, where you stored it, but you did a great job.
It wasn't stored any place that I wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't stuck in a cold attic, and it wasn't
stuck
in a damp basement.
Yeah.
But I did tell Alexander that I can thank a woman whose name I cannot recall. In another phase of my life, I made custom wedding gowns and attendance dresses and bridal wear. And a woman came to me to have 2 formal black gowns made for when she played in symphony. And she happened to be a violinist. And I asked her to look at my dad's violin for me, and she noticed a couple little spots that needed some attention, and gave me the name of her violin, a violin maker that was 2 towns away, and he did some modest repair on it. And I did have a sense that I'd hoped anyway that it was a little bit above a beginner violin quality, because the woman offered to lease the violin from me and pay the insurance, but I just didn't want it out of my possession, so I didn't go there. So I was happy to hear that it has a nice enough sound that that Alexander can play it and enjoy it.
That is, that's really, really good. And maybe, Alex, if you can talk a little bit about sort of how crazy we as violinists can be about stories. Where is the violin?
Oh my goodness.
And-
Yeah.
And
So
how, things, it's very temperamental. Like the violin is a super temperamental instrument.
right, and people don't realize. I mean, you really have to treat it with care. When it's too dry, so I put a dampit inside the violin in the F holes, and that keeps the inside, prevents it from drying out.
You have to show them what an F hole is. Yeah.
Sorry. So the dampit goes inside the F hole, and so basically the dampit, you put it in water like a sponge, wring it out, and then dry it off, put it in the F hole, and that's when it's really dry, and it's to help prevent the violin from drying out and the wood from cracking. But you still have to be careful. I mean, you have a humidifier in your house, or it's summertime, you have a dehumidifier. You have to be very particular when it comes to wood. And I have insurance policies on my instruments, and I'm careful about where I put it, and if it's in my vehicle, it's just, there's a lot that goes into it. You almost treat it like a baby.
Yeah, it is. You
Yeah.
don't leave it on outside walls where it's cold, where it's hot.
Right.
Just right. So all of this is to applaud Denise's really caring for this
Absolutely
super valuable piece of wood, right? Because it just, with that type of care, the older it gets, the more mellow the wood, and it just, the resonating of the instrument.
I probably had not heard my dad play that violin since I was probably maybe 12 or 13 years old.
Wow.
And again, after I had it repaired, about, I'm going to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I hired a violinist and a flutist to come, and we had a little gathering of some relatives and a few neighbors, and had a little mini concert in our backyard. But between, say, 1963 and 2018, I probably had not. I know I hadn't heard it played.
Wow.
Wow.
So can you take us through? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said I was happy to know it was in good condition.
Oh yeah. Can you take us through? So you see the news story. So you have your dad's violin. Are you, at this point, are you knowing that you're looking for a home for it, and then you see the news story about the work that Officer Strachan was doing?
Yes, I always was in this dilemma of what do I do with this violin? And it was never about the money. Gee, I could sell this thing. No, I didn't want to go there. No one in the family is musical. I'm probably the only one that's musical. I can hum and whistle, and that's about it. So there just wasn't a family member to, pass the legacy on to. And again, when I saw that first airing of that CBS News show, it just was the answer to my problem.
So you reached out to Officer Strachan, and we heard that you corresponded through the COVID times, and then how is that right? And then how did you come together?
Well, just I let him know that, I was looking to pass this violin on to him, and I didn't really have a idea of what he might do with it, whether he would play it himself or if he had other people that participated in some of those hospice visits. I wasn't even adverse to him donating it, passing it along to maybe an immigrant that didn't have the money to invest in a violin. I just wanted something good to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I can see this sort of in a movie form. I think, is it called The Red Violin? I forgot, a movie.
Red violin.
Yeah, where they trace this instrument, a couple hundred years, and you see the different vignettes of the people that, yeah. So this is sort of this kind of legacy, just, the, Alex, what year does it say inside?
1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Flashlight.
Okay.
7. It says, it actually doesn't say a year.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah, now that will be a fascinating story.
Let's look it up because it doesn't say a year on it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, typically, yeah.
Yeah. I
I know, believe me, I know. I was looking at first, like, how old is this violin actually?
Yeah. So, I would love to hear more about your father. Tell us about your father.
Well, again, he came to the United States in 1920. He was 16. Accompanying him was his sister, who was married, and she had a 5-year-old daughter with her, my dad's niece, and she also brought her brother, who was 17 at the time. Family members have tried to figure out when my dad's sister's husband came to the States. We think it was probably a year or two before she came, because that was pretty common back in the turn of the century, that the husbands would come over, work for a couple of years, and then send for their families. So that's, what we think happened. And he originally settled in Jamestown, New York, with the rest of his siblings. The violin photograph that I think you have, I don't know what symphony that is. We're guessing it might have been Buffalo, but it's obviously a very ornate stage. It's not a junior high, gymnasium set up. And Alexander would know what chair my dad's sitting in, first chair, second chair, who would know.
Which one is he?
It's actually marked. It's there's a little initials on him. He's maybe like fourth in from the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Second row.
Oh, I see it now. Yes.
Yeah, you could say second, but
yeah, probably.
And so he was there until 1935, and worked as a waiter, according to some of these petitions for naturalization and declaration of intent papers. He's listed as a waiter. And then he came to Natick, Massachusetts, and married my mom in 1937. And had a restaurant business until the very late 60s, and at which point he leased out the restaurant to other restaurateurs, when he retired. But he really didn't do anything musical, at least when he was in Natick. He didn't have time. He cooked a breakfast meal, a lunch meal, and a dinner meal, because everyone in town ate there. All the merchants, all the municipal employees, police, fire, teachers, He served 3 meals a day. And like I said in the recording that I made with WBZ, he left in the dark in the morning at, 5 o'clock to cook 7 trays of muffins, and he came home at 8 o'clock at night after cleaning up from the dinner meal. As he was, got older, he would come home and take a break, a little cat nap from about 2 in the afternoon till 4, but he worked a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about the sacrifice and yeah.
But as crazy as that sounds, I had a charmed childhood because I was at that restaurant from when I was probably close to Julian's age till my teen years. And it was fun. It was a fun time.
Oh, that is beautiful.
It was a fun time.
Yeah. Kyla, are there any more pictures?
Oh, actually, we have a lot of pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's one more of Denise, your father, here with the vehicle. And I know you've got a small screen. Can you tell us about this picture?
I believe that's their engagement photo.
This is your parents?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right.
And they were match made.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
Family in Natick, Massachusetts, knew people in Jamestown, and the story I heard was, we have a lovely young man for your daughter.
Wow.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
So we have some pictures of when you two met for the first time. So I'm going to pull them up, but can you tell us, like, when did this meeting take place? When and where did you finally get to meet after the couple of years of corresponding?
Ooh, December. I don't remember the date exactly, although I probably have it written down here somewhere.
Yeah, this happened. So this is on the Eastern Shore. So pretty much not far off the Bay Bridge. It was funny because it was really foggy that night. So, and I decided to bring my wife and Julian. I was like, all right, let's just make this an outing. Like, why not? So there's my wife and Julian. He's a big baby. So it's funny because I'm glad he went, and I'm glad Denise held him, because for a long time he couldn't stand the sound of the violin. I'm like, you're my son. What are you talking about, man? I was like, no. Yeah, he would howl, just howl every time he heard the fiddle. But that time he didn't, which was nice. And it was really cool for him to be part of the experience and to see, like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but someone's holding me, so we're good. And the cool thing is you can kind of see the lady's head behind the service desk. But I remember playing, and this was in like the Quality Inn, so people could hear it because we're in the lobby and it resonated. But the lady behind the front desk was like, well, this is really, I don't know what's going on. I was playing Christmas tunes. So she's like, I got to get my coworker. Can you play again? I was like, yeah, sure. Why not?
Nice. And we have this. This is you. I guess checking out the violin here.
Right. So I was inspecting it, just its condition, trying to see if there are any cracks or open seams, which normally, so you'll see it along here. Like I was looking around this area because oftentimes, depending on, especially in older violins, they haven't, depending on how long they've been sitting in case where they've been stored, you'll see like an opening or cracks along the wood. And so that's, I'm like, okay, well, is that something we're gonna have to have repaired? But it was in good condition. I didn't find any issues.
So, Alex, was there a bow that you used, or did you bring a bow?
I brought 2 bows.
Gotcha.
That wasn't sure. Yeah, I had to bring my bows because you can see in the picture of those 2 bows in the case, the bow hair was frayed and they weren't in playing condition.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought my own bows. Because it's harder to store bows and for them to be in great condition because with Battle Brooks, as you know, you have to have your bow rehaired after X amount of time, depending on how often you play. I'm definitely due for a rehair this year, so but so I definitely, so I'm glad I brought my bows.
Nice.
Well, I was glad Julian was there too, because I had fully expected that I was going to break down and start sobbing
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
Alexander started to play, and if I hadn't been holding that cute kid, I probably would have. But he was
Yeah.
my little emotional support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had a good old time. We went to I forget the name of the restaurant we went to. I gotta look it up, but Julian had we all had a really good time because the train would go. It was every time you looked up the ceiling, you saw the train, and you're like, oh, this is really cool. I was like, this is great. All the Christmas decorations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine sort of the emotional toll or the emotions that come to play, right? Because here is as you said, a family heirloom that you had lovingly kept and lovingly taken care of and not shunted it off, as you said, to the attic or the basement. It was where you were, right? So it was visible. It was a reminder, right? And it is such a unselfish act, right? To initiate with a total stranger and then to, drive the 3 days down and just, it really is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know, I guess all I can tell you is I slept like a baby that night. I was just so peaceful about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Denise, part of the reason the journey took 3 days is because you were doing something else on the way. Am I correct about that? That you were doing some of your I don't want to skip to the last chapter of the book, but am I right that you were doing your weather reporting?
Well, no, I let them know at WBZ, so I'm a weather watcher up here for the
So
Boston.
we have pictures. So should I share some weather watching pictures and you can tell us about?
If you like.
I'd love to. So yes.
It's a whole network of weather geeks. There are hundreds of us. Some people are, pretty regular with their reporting. Other people just, send in pictures or incredible reports if something really interesting is happening with weather. And I believe I let them know at the station that I would be out of commission for 3 days. Not that they're relying on my reporting, because we don't forecast. We just, report in the conditions that we're experiencing at the time. And then I gave them an update when I got back, about my trip. So that was part of it, but I also was going down to Delaware to visit a quick luncheon with a friend that I hadn't seen for almost 12 years. So, it was a great trip.
So I put in the chat for people watching. I did put in the chat, CBS News in Boston or in Massachusetts did a story about Denise's gift of this violin to Officer Strachan. So you can check that out. And I just wanted to share these pictures as, the pictures that we just shared. These are pictures that you take as you're doing your weather reporting. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
So can we just talk quickly? How did you get into this?
Oh, because I was a weather geek for a local newspaper when I lived in Natick, which is 60 miles, 70 miles from here and 18 miles west of Boston. It wasn't as involved as what we do with the station here now, but it was mostly reporting temperature and snowfall. But everyone that participated went to the National Weather Service training so we could get certified as, sky warn reporters. And I don't know, it's just always been kind of an interest in mine. I have, I think, 3 weather stations set up, probably a little bit much, but
Wow.
every one of them gives me a little bit different, like a 1 degree different temperature, depending on north facing, south facing. So it's fun.
Okay, thank you.
It actually sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears just for a minute. Alex, you know, how do your police friends and colleagues, you know, do they give you like the RCA dog like violin? What?
I think so. Not so much now.
Right, but yeah.
Yeah, for reasons. But no, I mean, so it's funny because when we were trying to do the Boston CBS News interview, I knew it was going to be virtual. So a reporter reached out to me, and I was on duty. So I told my sergeant, I was like, "Hey, I got to do this interview real quick upstairs." So I went upstairs in the station. I was like, "Okay." So we did a quick interview. I mean, it was just funny. I think they were just laughing about it in a good way. It's because it was, putting on a different hat and something unexpected. I'm like, okay, you got to go do an interview? Sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And also, you know, it's I mean, you know, let's be honest and frank, like, you know, an African American man playing a violin is not it's not the thing du jour. It's not what happens all the time.
No, and especially in police uniform, like I don't know any other one.
Yeah.
I mean, if there are, cool. I'd love to meet up, have a conversation, but it's that especially African American male police officer plays the violin, but also like focuses on classical music.
That's right.
Or oldies, or just because a lot of times, especially now, it's a whole separate conversation, but we have a lot of social media musicians, and you'll hear specific types of music or specific songs that are just really popular. And I'm like, well, okay, cool. You can hear Vivaldi all day, but how often are people going into nursing homes and playing music that our parents or grandparents grew up hearing?
That's right.
Unfortunately, not enough.
No, that's right. And I know that you and I have talked about this before, but just, your work in hospice care before you became a police officer, that's really special, because that is a very special and unique calling. And reaching folks in that stage of life is really meaningful. So, yeah.
I agree. It's hard too, because you have to understand that you're in a room with somebody going through such an unimaginably difficult time, and they're experiencing emotions that you're not going to understand unless you've gone through it yourself. But even then, you may not, because your relationship with your loved one is probably different than their relationship with their loved one that's actively dying or in their end of life. So, having to be really sensitive to that, especially as a musician, I have to tailor how I play to each person. So certain song requests, or maybe I'm playing softly, maybe I'm playing slower, or it all depends. Sometimes I'm in the room, sometimes I'm outside in the hallway playing, and people, hear the music that way. It all depends.
Yeah, and it's just interesting with the studies that show, with perhaps dementia patients, right, may not remember anything but that music, right? Those songs.
So I have my grandmother. She remembered. She couldn't remember where she was or who was in the room, but she still remembered her hymns. And the lyrics. I'm like, how? So
it is phenomenal. Exactly. Yeah, that's that pathway is. So, yeah. So we've got sort of this marriage of this violin now. The good work continues through Alex's special gifts and sensibilities.
I think the cool thing about this story in particular with Denise and I is that it could have very easily just fallen apart. I don't know, people aren't the like I'm not always the best at replying to emails, so I'm gonna let it sit. But we kept in touch. We sent each other pictures. We kept each other updated in our lives. And like Denise is really steadfast and persistent about wanting to meet and make this happen. I was like, yeah, let's do this. Like, why not? And I mean, it's so cool. I can't wait. I'm gonna we're all family. We're gonna visit Denise in August, so she gets to babysit Mr. Julian.
Yay.
I mean, this is one of the things that I love about this story is the friendship. We talk about the music, like the power, the connective power of music. And that you talked about this, Alex, earlier when you were talking about that this email relationship went on for a while before you actually met, including, okay, like my wife's pregnant. Okay, now there's a baby. Here's, like, and then to meet and Denise, you're talking about holding the baby and keeping the tears at bay, and the relationship with Julie, like how important Julie, and then the fact that you're going to meet again. So I do want to talk or highlight that the friendship, the relationship that this violin has created.
Right.
Well, it was really so important to me that I found a place for this violin, the perfect place for this violin, that every few months I would send Alexander an email and say, I'm still here. I haven't forgotten about this. I want this to happen. And, with COVID and everything going on, it was just took time to really get this, settled and planned out. And the connection, I think, was there from the get-go, that this was going to happen. And it was just a question of, finding a right time. And then, I'm not getting any younger. And this past fall, I just said to my husband, this is it. We're doing it. We're going down. And I was willing to factor in Alexander's work schedule and try and factor in my friends to see them for just a quick luncheon. And it just worked out perfectly.
Was there any sort of, was all of the family on board, or it was ultimately whatever you decided, or was that path also smooth?
Absolutely. I had full authority to do whatever I wanted with the instrument. I had been the guardian of it for, like I said, since my dad passed away in 1973, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was just finding the right place to pass it along.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is Alex wasn't born in 1973, right? So
No.
exactly, I know, right? That's 50 years ago, right? So you just think about sort of, timing and how life just is. Yeah.
And the funny thing that caught my attention too in that first interview that Alex did with CBS was he mentioned that when he was 10, he wanted to play the drums, and his mother kind of dissuaded him from that. And the funny thing is, when I was about 12 or 13, and I should add that my dad was pushing 50 when I was born, I wanted a drum set in the worst way, and he got me one.
Wow.
Okay.
And when I think back on it now, that he was in his late 60s, and I was in my bedroom playing Wipeout for hours on end. He was a saint. He never once came up and said, could you take this down a notch? Geez, can you give this a break? Never once, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Considering he played classical violin.
Yeah, no, parents have so much, the little things that sometimes make a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
What words of advice would you give, Denise, if somebody had something that was precious to them? Not just precious in a monetary sense, but precious in memories and if and thinking about passing this on to someone, what words of advice?
Well, kind of following in my mom and dad's footsteps in that regard. In that, my parents were very generous, actually gave me a house, a family homestead when I was 24, 25 years old, unheard of.
Yeah.
But my mother's attitude, and this was shortly after my dad died, my mother's attitude was, why give something to someone when they're 60 years old and they don't need it? Why not pass something along to someone, whether it's, some nice china or, those small memento kinds of things, so you can see that person enjoy that, rather than when you're not around anymore. So I could have left it to someone else to deal with, but this is a good thing, because now we get to see and hear Alex play every once in a while. I know something good's happening. My whole family was on board, with this. They all just loved it, They'd say, oh, God, your dad would absolutely love this. So that's good.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Just life lessons, really about living in the moment is kind of what I hear,
Right.
subtext. Living in the moment. Huh. Kyla, do you have any questions?
Well, I do have a question, which is I was going to ask if Officer Strachan would play again for us.
Yeah, sure. Not a
If you're
problem.
prepared, not to. Okay, that'd be wonderful to hear a little more. Yeah.
That's like keeps me is relatively new strings.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
Yeah. It's everybody's worst nightmare because they don't stay.
No, not at all. So I've geared pegs on the other fiddle, but I'm
Right.
working with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bravo.
You know,
Thank you. Yeah.
one of the things that Renee and I talk about sometimes is what a privilege it is to get to do the job that we do. And we get to talk to such wonderful people. And I have to say that I feel so honored tonight. I feel very honored to have just heard what we heard and to be sharing in your story. Like, I really feel that you both have honored us with sharing this with us and being with us. And, you know, I just want to take a moment and thank you both. And that music really touched me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Amazing grace, always. Yeah.
We do have a question from an audience member, and I think I sort of feel like the answer has spoken for itself, but I do want to share it. This is from our good friend, Ms. Vivian, who's a real regular with the library and our office and is a great supporter of all of our programs. And she is wondering if you like playing your violin.
Depends on the part of the day.
Oh, that's great.
It depends. Sometimes. Yeah, if I'm like after a shift and I'm tired, no, I want to go to sleep. But normally, yes.
I know I used to say, oh, my violin is so temperamental, but it probably wasn't the instrument, right? But some days you feel like you're fighting with it. And other days it's like,
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. So especially when you're playing new strings and you know things aren't as in tune. Like, oh my god, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and Denise, you said your father, like he was in orchestra. We have the picture that we shared, and you talked about him playing. And am I right? I want to just make sure I've understood the story right. He was given a violin when he came to the United States. Had he played the violin before?
No.
So he picked it up at 16, 17, or as an adult?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's huge because that's, yeah.
No. I mean, to my knowledge, had zero education as well.
Do you know what part of Romania?
Albania.
Oh, Albania. I'm sorry. I thought you said Romania.
He came from Korcha.
All right. Wonderful.
And it wasn't actually until a short while ago, I'm going to say maybe 3 years ago, that I found out he had siblings that he never mentioned to me.
Wow.
And my mom got a visa to go back there. She came when she was about 6 months old, a few months after the Titanic sank. Can you imagine getting on a boat with an infant? She was the oldest in her family. She did go back to Albania because she had elderly aunts and uncles that were still alive there. My dad had no interest in going back, especially after the country turned communist. He just didn't have an interest. And his siblings, the living siblings, most of them had moved to Greece. They scattered.
It's just fascinating how the trajectory that life takes, right? Yeah. One person at age 16 leaves one place in the world, comes, fast forward, and here the four of us are talking about it. Like, we wouldn't have met, we wouldn't know each other, but for these little, right? What if you hadn't actually tuned in the news that day? There's just so many interesting turns that just looking here makes all the difference.
Oh, it's true. If I hadn't been a weather watcher and just doing my last little report or sending in a nice picture, which I think it's a nice picture, I probably would not have ever seen this. Never crossed paths.
Yeah. This adventure called life is remarkable.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I think we are, unfortunately, coming very close to the end of time. Renee, if you have a very quick question, we can squeeze one in, but otherwise
I'm good. I'm literally now just sitting and processing.
Yeah, it's been powerful. I really feel impacted on a personal level. And I mean, it really is a privilege to get to do this kind of work and to share and to get to talk to people like the two of you. I'm just thinking, like for people watching at home, like, of course, it's a beautiful story and it's wonderful. and it's inspiring. And I'm just thinking about ways that like this idea of taking something precious to us, the gift that we give something that's precious and that we love, and sharing that's the kind of gift that we give to somebody else, and how that really is incredible. Denise, what you gave to Alex, and Alex, that you were willing to connect with a stranger like over the internet, it really is, it's amazing, So thank you both. And so for everybody watching at home, we do hope that you continue to join us for programs. We have a bunch more things coming up. If you tried to join us earlier this week to do an event on this book, Path of Grace, on Tuesday, you may have noticed that we had a technological problem and we need to reschedule. It looks like we're going to be able to do that this coming Tuesday, the 20th of February. So stay tuned for YouTube links on our webpage, as well as on the library's webpage and social media. We also have an in-person interfaith discussion. We really hope you can join us at. It is on Thursday, the 22nd, at 7 p.m. at Hyattsville Mennonite Church. And again, there's information on our website, civilrights.mypgc.us. And we encourage you to also check out the library at pgcmls.info. They have many, many, many events every single day and lots of wonderful information for you. So please check out our event partners. Thank you for everybody tuning in. And to Denise and Officer Strachan, it has really been a privilege. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
That was my way.